My name is John Herrick. I'm Counsel and General Manager for the South Delta Water Agency, which was created pursuant to state statute. The three Delta agencies, one of them being South, were constituted to give a political representation of the area with funding in light of the fact that the projects were doing significant actions in the Delta. Our original job was to actually reach contracts with the Department of Water Resources and the Bureau to ensure our water quality and supply. And let's just say after 40 years those efforts have been futile, but we keep trying. I'm also a member of a number of local boards, County Advisory Water Commission, we have a Groundwater Banking Authority, I'm on the Resource Conservation District Board. All of those positions are on behalf of South Delta and deal with, generally, water issues for local and area-wide needs. Basically, the South Delta Water Agency activities are a full-time job. Now, that's unfortunate. And, of course, people laugh and say, oh, it's good for you, John. It's good for me individually in that I have a nice job and I get paid by my generally one client regularly and I don't have to worry about that. But it's sad in the fact that the people in my area have to be assessed every year to pay people like me to try to prevent the state and federal people from adversely affecting them. Whenever I go to these hearings, I say, we just want you to leave us alone. We're not looking for something from someone. We just want you to stop hurting us. So my full-time job is all these South Delta matters, which are all the Delta matters, which are all the statewide matters. I don't get into, Imperial Valley stuff, although we keep up on it generally, but it's all of the state water project issues and the federal water project issues associated with the Delta and exports. There is certainly a way to stop the tunnels, and I'll get to that in a second. The current status of everything is we're almost reaching the climax in a number of processes. So the next few years are a very important watershed, for California water and California water law and rights. The state board process is proceeding to determine how much water is needed to meet the beneficial uses of the Delta, which include fish. And there's a big disagreement and fight coming up about how much water from whom is going to be needed to flow into the Delta. That also corresponds to a process at the state board where, okay, how much water can be exported when? They have jurisdiction over that, even though the fishery agencies make their rules. The state board's the one in charge of the permits for the projects. That alone is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. I can't tell you how it's going to turn out. One of the issues in there is whether they should relax the Southern Delta salinity standards. As I like to say, the only place in the continental U.S. where they're debating the relaxation of water quality standards is the Southern Delta. Why? Because nobody wants to meet the standard. They just want the salt to collect there. That's another story. But of course, the big issue right now, which is intruding on everything, is the BDCP process. Now, after so many years and so many hundreds of millions of dollars, they say they're going to produce their draft plan and environmental review documents for the public to look at. There have been pre-drafts, so to speak, of different things coming out recently. But they have to get a plan. Now, that is a fundamental issue for the state of California because the plan has nothing to do with more water for the state. Now, remember I said that in 2007 and 8 we had this drought and there was no water. Building tunnels and intakes has nothing to do with addressing that situation. Nothing, because nothing they do would add water to storage upstream. It doesn't work that way. So they have a process by which one party, the exporters, want to make sure they have a hard facility that they can operate when they need to. And as we saw in 2009 when they stole a half or a third of the fish water, guess what they'll do in a drought if they have twin tunnels? They'll steal all of the Sacramento River water after they've declared emergency, and the Delta will get nothing. Not something. It will get nothing because, it's such a crisis and we have to declare an emergency. That's what they will do. That's our belief. Anyway, the process by which they're proceeding seeks habitat conservation plans under both state and federal endangered species law. those plans are a little different from other sort of take permits. You're given a permit to kill an endangered species if, do this. But the habitat conservation plans require that your interference with the species is offset not by just mitigation, but by an effort to improve the population, so recover the species. So you can kill, 2 condors if your plan says, well, we're going to have 10 condors in 5, so you can, as long as you're increasing, showing the recovery of the species, they let you do it. All of the fishery comments so far that we've seen, and these are recent comments, fishery agency comments, on the plan say, it looks like you won't have an adverse effect on the fish. Maybe in 30 years, you'll have a little teeny benefit for one of the species. So the plan doesn't recover the populations of the fish species, which means you can't get a permit. Now, right now, mid-level fishery biologists at, NIMS, Fish and Wildlife, Department of Fish and Wildlife, they're being tied to the floor and their arms being twisted behind them, trying to get them to change their minds on their scientific opinions right now. We'll have to see how much torture they can take before they agree to sell out. But the basic premise upon which BDCP is founded doesn't work. If you put the tunnels in and you create 120,000 acres of habitat, nothing shows that ends up with more fish, which means you can't get a permit. So that's the big problem scientifically. Now, there's all sorts of issues scientifically, and it's a 2-day speech here about how that affects the South Delta. We're done. If they can take water from the north and do it, the insufficient flow of the San Joaquin River, the river doesn't reach the bay because there's not enough. We're done without the pumps taking the salt out, which they created. Anyway, there's all sorts of other issues, but that fundamental fishery issue should stop them eventually, whether it's in the court or it's they can't get people to lie for them. That should stop them. But eventually those truths will come out and it will be prevented. Now, there are all sorts of other things involved in that, and that's a long discussion of the BDCP. The original idea was we'll just move these intakes because having them in the south is bad for fish, so we'll move them up here. Well, then after analysis, they said, they won't let us use them when we want to. They can only use them in half of the years. And by the way, when you use them, there are restrictions on them. So they say, well, we still have to pump from the south now. So now the plan is, well, we'll do this and we'll do that. And by the way, it's going to be less water. Somebody going to pay $15 billion to get less water? I don't think so. Anyway, that's the next part. Anyway, so there are other issues of fishery things that I could discuss, but it's that basic thing that your plan doesn't result in the species being better off. You've configured it so, wink, wink, it doesn't further degrade their populations. But that's not the rule. The rule is make them better. So that's one reason. And I again, that will prevail either at this administrative level and it falls apart because of that, or once it gets in the courts and those biologists are put on the stand and they say, yes, in our opinion it doesn't do that, but our supervisors changed the rule, which is what happened before. But the other part is money. Now, I'm no economist. Dr. Jeff Michael at UOP is the guy. He knows it all. His critiques of their work are just wondrous to read because they're so complete, scientific, detached, and correct. Just shows how they're trying to fake things. Anyway, here's the basic issue. Kern County Water Agency, as an example, we were talking about Kern County, their payment to the state for their contract for this fiscal year was anticipated to be approximately $140 million. That's a lot of money, but that was their payment to the state for their contribution towards the capital cost of the project, their ongoing bills to pay the bonds off. If you divide a $15 billion project, that's only their part, the $15 billion, amongst the people who are supporting BDCP, like Kern County, the ones that would get the benefit. Kern County's share is $150 million. Additional. So at some point, somewhere, a businessman farmer, whether it's a member of one of these water agencies down south, or it's a board member of one of those agencies, will stand before the people who are saying sign here and they'll say, explain that to me again? After all your talk of all the benefits we're going to get, we're probably going to get the same amount or less water, and you want me to double my yearly payment to you. It's impossible. It cannot happen. Now, just because I say that doesn't mean it's true, but it's true. It's that fundamental problem that cannot be overcome. Now, they can try to get Fed money, and they are. They're trying to get $3 to $4 billion from the Feds, which is more money than the Central Valley Project has ever gotten, or 5-year period, much less 1 year. They're trying to get money from the state. They're trying to get the state bond money. There are all sorts of machinations going on trying to figure this out. If you can't afford the water, you can't go forward with the project. And why would you go forward with the project if you don't get more water? Well, that's the most recent twist. Once they realized that the world was understanding that they were liars and cheaters, then they said, oh, well, the economic analysis is based upon we'll probably get 2 or 3 million acre feet less in a couple years. So there's a benefit by not getting less, by getting the same, rather than we're not getting any more water. So they're just, again, I use nasty words, but they're just cheating. We'll change the calculation so it comes out better. And that's what Jeff Michael does. He reads it and he says, well, you can't do that. Your analysis says this, and now you change it to make it come out right. You can't do that. So the economic issue is probably what is going to control the eventual outcome. Now, there are a lot of people who put up a lot of money. Whatever the square footage cost comes out to be, it's in excess of what anybody's going to pay if they're not getting more water. If somebody said, I'm just making the numbers up, you're getting 5,000 acre feet now, we're going to do this project and you get 10,000, it's going to cost you another, double your cost. Somebody say, well, maybe. But you can't say, you get 5,000 now, you're going to get 5,000 later, and I want you to double your cost. So it doesn't matter whether it's $400 an acre foot, 1,000 or 2,000. These are all various calculations depending on who pays how much when. But it doesn't work. Nobody will do that because that doesn't help you. That decreases your bottom line. So that's the main part of that. But it's my opinion, and this is just opinion. There's no documents or quiet conversations that confirm this. But I keep looking and say, why is this going forward? I believe the leaders of the exporters are leading their clients to ruination. The leaders of the exporters are saying, okay, if we can have a method of grabbing this water, which isn't there for them, they're going to grab somebody else's water, fish's water or something else. We can grab that and be able to grab it in a drought, whether farming goes or not. That'll be worth something in 5, 10, 20 years. And so I don't think they have anything written down that it's going to go here, but their plan is if we have this water in our control in 20 years, somebody's going to want it for a lot of money. And that's true, because we're not going to stop growing in California, unfortunately. So I don't think it's a specific, this person's going to get it, but I believe that's the overriding, that's what we're going to do. We're going to grab onto this thing. Well, what that does is that's just ignoring their clients, the farmers, right? And those businessmen farmers one day are going to sit there and go, that's not what you told me, and then it's all going to come crumbling down.